My dear friends, sometimes in life we feel like we are walking alone. We look around and it seems like no one understands our pain, no one sees our struggle, and no one truly knows what we're going through. Have you ever felt that? You put on a smile, but inside there's a silent storm. You help everyone, but when you need help, it's suddenly quiet. In those moments, our mind whispers, maybe God has left me. But let me tell you something very simple, very profound. God never leaves you. He may be silent, but He is never absent. His presence may not always be loud, but it's always loving. Just like the sun still shines behind the clouds, God's presence is behind your every delay, every detour, and every disappointment. Sometimes God hides, not to abandon you, but to build you. He allows silence not to punish you, but to strengthen your faith. You see, the teacher is always silent during the test, and that's exactly how God works. So today, let's talk about something deeply comforting, something that can change the way you look at life forever. The truth that God is always with you. Even when you can't feel Him, even when you can't hear Him, and even when you think He has forgotten you, He is right there, working silently behind the scenes of your life. When God is silent, most people assume He has left. They start to question His presence, His care, and even His love. But silence is not the absence of God. It's His most profound way of teaching you to listen differently. We often expect God to shout from the heavens, to give us instant answers, or to show immediate signs. Yet, the truth is that His silence has meaning, a meaning so deep that only a patient heart can understand it. Sometimes, silence is not punishment, it's preparation. It's not rejection, it's redirection. Think about it. When a teacher gives a test, does the teacher speak? No. The teacher observes silently while the student applies everything they've learned. The silence of the teacher doesn't mean the teacher has disappeared. It means the teacher is watching, guiding, and evaluating how much the student has grown. Similarly, when life tests you, when things suddenly stop moving, when prayers seem unanswered, when your world feels quiet, God is not gone. He's simply waiting for you to use what He has already placed within you. Many times, we measure God's presence by how visible He seems. If things go right, we say, God is with me. But when things fall apart, we assume He has abandoned us. Yet if you look closely, your greatest growth always happens in the seasons of silence. It's when no one is clapping for you, when you can't see the path clearly, that your faith deepens, your patience strengthens, and your character is built. Silence is where the soul learns to trust what the eyes cannot see. Let's take a simple example from daily life. Imagine a seed buried in the soil. For weeks, it sees nothing but darkness. The earth presses down, water soaks through, and there's no sign of light. If the seed could speak, it might cry out, "Why is it so dark? Why am I alone?" But the truth is that darkness is not its death, it's its transformation. Beneath that soil, life is stirring. Roots are forming. Growth is happening invisibly. The silence of the soil is sacred. It's God's quiet work. The same happens to us. When life feels heavy and directionless, it's often the time when God is working beneath the surface, preparing your roots for something beautiful to rise later. I remember once meeting a man who lost his job after 20 years of loyal service. He told me, "I prayed and prayed, but God didn't answer. I felt betrayed." But a few months later, in that space of uncertainty, he started a small business with the skills he had overlooked for years. That business not only brought him success, but also gave him joy and freedom he had never known. When I met him again, He smiled and said, "No, I understand. God wasn't silent. He was steering me." Sometimes God's silence is not a sign that nothing is happening, it's a sign that something unseen is unfolding. The problem is that in silence, our mind becomes loud. It fills the quiet with fear. What if I fail? What if I'm forgotten? What if this pain never ends? But the truth is, silence is not a void to be filled, it's a space to be felt. It's in that quietness that your heart learns to hear whispers that your ears cannot. Maybe God is saying, "Be stewing. Trust me. I'm working on something that will make sense later." Every masterpiece takes time. A sculptor doesn't rush his creation. He carves slowly, patiently, removing what doesn't belong. If you walked into his studio midway, you might see a half-shaped stone and think, "There's nothing beautiful here." But the sculptor sees the finished figure inside the rough edges. In the same way, God is the artist of your soul. When He's silent, He's not inactive. He's carving, He's shaping. And yes, sometimes that carving hurts, but it's forming the version of you that He always saw even before you did. Have you ever sat beside a loved one in a hospital room? Often no words are spoken, but the silence between you is full of love. The presence is stronger than speech. That's how God's silence feels. It's not an empty silence. It's full of compassion, care, and quiet strength. When you begin to see His silence as His presence, not His distance, peace begins to fill your heart. We must learn to stop demanding sound and start recognizing presence. Because even in silence, the divine is near, in the rhythm of your breath, in the beating of your heart, in the gentle order of each day. If the sun rises, if the breeze blows, if your heart still beats, then know this: God is with you. Silence is His gentle assurance that you already carry His strength within. The seed doesn't hear the gardener whisper, yet it grows. The child doesn't hear the heartbeat of the mother when asleep, yet it feels safe. The bird doesn't hear the wind promise to hold it, yet it flies. And so, even when you can't hear God, you can still trust that He's there. Because silence is not the space where He disappears. It's the sacred space where He wants you to draw closer, listen deeper, and believe stronger. So, the next time your prayers go unanswered, don't rush to assume He's forgotten you. Maybe He's simply saying, "My child, it's your turn now. Show me how much you've grown. Show me that you trust me even when you don't hear me." His silence is the invitation to rise higher, to walk by faith and not by sight. And when one day the silence breaks and everything falls beautifully into place, you look back and realize He was never gone. He was just quietly building your strength through stillness. The silence that once scared you became the bridge that connected you to His presence. God's silence is never absence. It's the sound of His deeper work. And if you can trust that, you will never fear silence again. Because even in stillness, He's always speaking. We often believe that when life gets harder, God moves farther. But the truth is the opposite. The tougher your time, the closer His presence. It's just that when pain surrounds us, our emotions grow louder than our awareness. In storms, we forget that silence is not absence and difficulty is not desertion. When everything seems to be falling apart, it's not that God has stepped away. It's that He's walking beside you, whispering, "Hold on, I'm still here." The darkest nights are not proof of His distance. They are proof that He trusts you enough to face the test with Him by your side. There's a moment in everyone's life when everything that once made sense suddenly doesn't. You pray and it feels like the heavens have turned quiet. You plan and life keeps undoing your efforts. You look around and no one seems to understand what you're carrying inside. That's when the mind starts to say, "Where is God now?" But if you look back carefully at your life, you'll notice something beautiful. Every time you thought you were breaking, you actually became stronger. Every time you thought it was the end, something new began. Every time you thought God had left, He was actually lifting you. You see, His presence doesn't always come wrapped in comfort. Sometimes it comes disguised as chaos. Imagine a child learning to walk. At first, the parent holds the child's hand, step by step. But there comes a moment when the parent lets go, not out of neglect, but out of trust. The child wobbles, stumbles, maybe even falls. To the child, that moment feels terrifying, as if the parent has vanished. But the parent is right there, heart pounding, arms ready to catch if the fall becomes too deep. That's how God deals with us. When you stumble, He doesn't run away, He steps back just enough to let you grow into your strength. His seeming distance is actually His silent encouragement. I once met a young woman who told me her story. She lost her job, her relationship, and her sense of direction, all within the same year. She said, "I prayed every night, but I couldn't feel anything. It was like God had gone silent." Yet in that silence, she discovered a part of herself that had been asleep for years. She started painting again, something she had loved as a child but abandoned long ago. Her art became her healing, and months later, she turned it into a full-time business. Looking back, she said something powerful. "That was the hardest season of my life, but now I know God wasn't gone. He was guiding me through the pain to rediscover myself." Sometimes, what feels like abandonment is actually the birth of a deeper connection. The toughest times strip away the illusions we depend on. The people we thought would never leave, the plans we thought would always work, the paths we thought would never end. When those fall apart, we finally look up instead of around, and that's where we find Him, not in the noise of success, but in the quiet of surrender. Pain has a strange way of turning our focus inward and upward. When everything external fails, you begin to feel something internal. A peace that doesn't make sense, a strength that wasn't there before, a calm whisper that says, "Keep walking." That's not your voice, that's His. Think of a butterfly inside a cocoon. The struggle to break free looks cruel. If someone were to cut open the cocoon to help, the butterfly would never fly. The pressure inside that tiny shell is what strengthens its wings. In the same way, the pressure you feel now isn't meant to crush you, it's meant to strengthen you. The more you resist the discomfort, the longer you delay your growth. But when you surrender and trust, when you say, "I may not understand this, but I believe something divine is unfolding," that's when your wings begin to form. God's presence in your pain is like the unseen force inside the cocoon, silent, invisible, but essential for flight. Many people say, "If God really cared, He would remove my suffering." But maybe caring doesn't always mean removing. Sometimes it means remaining. He stays through the storm. He sits with you in your sleepless nights. He stands beside you when everyone else walks away. His love isn't proven by how quickly He fixes your problems, but by how patiently He holds you through them. Just because He doesn't change your situation immediately doesn't mean He's not working on it. Sometimes He's changing you first. Remember, the darkest part of the night is just before dawn. When everything seems still, hopeless, and heavy, the light is closer than it appears. Your breakdown moments are often the birthplace of breakthroughs. God never wastes pain, He transforms it. He uses the fire that you thought would burn you to purify you. You'll notice later that the things that once made you cry now make you wise. The moments that once broke your spirit now built your soul. That's the secret of divine closeness. He doesn't always rescue you from the fire, but He stands with you inside it, turning your ashes into strength. So, when you find yourself in one of those seasons where nothing seems to make sense, stop trying to see God with your eyes. Feel Him with your heart. Feel Him in your courage to keep going, in your tears that still find strength, in your laughter that returns after pain. Every time you rise after falling, that's His power in motion. Every time you forgive instead of hate, that's His love flowing through you. Every time you choose peace instead of panic, that's His hand holding you steady. Life will keep testing you. There will be moments when everything seems to fall apart again. But now you'll know the truth. When life gets toughest, God is closest. His silence is not a sign of distance, it's a sign of trust. He believes in your strength because He lives within you. You don't walk through the storm alone, you walk with the one who controls it. And one day when you look back, you'll smile and say, He was there all along, not watching from above, but walking beside me through every tear, every trial, every turn. God does not always speak in the way we expect. We look for loud signs, big miracles, and dramatic answers, but the divine often communicates through whispers, through quiet nudges, through the gentle rhythm of everyday life. His voice is not always thunder from the sky. Sometimes it's the soft wind that brushes your face when you needed comfort, the stranger smile that reminds you kindness still exists, or that sudden peaceful feeling in your heart when everything outside seems chaotic. The truth is, God's voice is not absent, it's subtle. But in a world that has become so loud, most people miss it. Think about your daily routine for a moment. From the moment you wake up, your mind is flooded with noise, notifications, conversations, plans, responsibilities, deadlines. There is barely any stillness left. We scroll through our phones before we even greet the day. We rush through traffic, we hurry through meals, we chase tasks, and by the time night comes, we are exhausted but not peaceful. It's not that God isn't speaking, it's that we've filled our lives with so much noise that His voice can't be heard. It's like trying to hear the sound of a flute in a room full of drums. You must be still to listen. One day, a man told me something very touching. He said, I used to think God never spoke to me. Then one morning, as I was sitting in my car, frustrated about life, a small bird landed on my windshield. It didn't fly away. It just sat there and looked at me. And in that stillness, I felt something shift inside. A thought came to me, not loud, not dramatic, just soft. It said, breathe, you're doing better than you think. That was it. That was the message. And in that moment, he realized God had been speaking all along, just not in the way he expected. Sometimes, God speaks through life itself. When you lose something you thought you couldn't live without, He might be saying, that chapter is over. It's time to grow. When a person walks away from you, He might be whispering, that was not your destination, only your direction. When things slow down and your plans are delayed, He might be gently teaching you, be patient, I'm working behind the scenes. We often say, why doesn't God talk to me? But the truth is, He talks constantly, through moments, through people, through feelings, through silence. It's not His voice that's missing, it's our awareness. Look at nature. It's one of the clearest mirrors of divine communication. The sun doesn't speak, but its warmth tells you that light always returns. The waves of the ocean don't talk, but they show you that everything in life moves in rhythm, up and down, back and forth, yet always flowing. The trees don't shout, but their patience in shedding leaves teaches you that letting go is not loss, it's renewal. Every corner of creation is speaking, if only we slow down enough to listen. Have you ever noticed how the most powerful messages in life are often wordless? When someone you love simply holds your hand without saying anything, that silence carries more comfort than 1,000 sentences. God works in the same way. His presence doesn't always come in words. It comes in moments, in feelings, in the peace that follows a storm. He speaks in the language of life itself. Sometimes we hear him most clearly not when everything is going right, but when everything feels uncertain. When plans fall apart and you have no choice but to pause, that's when you start noticing his signs. You might meet the right person by accident, or hear exactly the words you needed from a random conversation. You might find a solution that seems to come out of nowhere. That's not coincidence, that's communication. God doesn't need a microphone to reach your heart. He uses life as his messenger. I once met a woman who said she stopped praying because she felt unheard. But later, she said something beautiful happened. She had been walking through a very difficult breakup, and one evening, as she sat crying on a park bench, an old woman she didn't know sat beside her and said, "You'll heal. Just don't close your heart to love again." That was all. And the old woman left, she told me. In that moment, I knew it was God speaking through a stranger. You see, divine communication isn't limited to temples or rituals. It can happen anywhere. Because God doesn't need a stage to reach your soul. He only needs your attention. We must learn to quiet the noise within us, the constant overthinking, the worries, the endless rush. When your mind becomes still, you start recognizing the subtle ways God guides you. Maybe you suddenly feel a sense of peace about a decision you were overthinking. Maybe you feel discomfort around something that looks right but isn't. That intuition, that inner voice, is often his gentle whisper. The heart is his instrument, and silence is his language. So, the next time you say, "God, why don't you speak to me?" pause and look around. Maybe he's already speaking through the sunrise you ignored, through the delay that saved you, through the disappointment that redirected you, or through that one moment of calm that made you breathe again. He's not distant, he's detailed. He's in the little things, the unnoticed blessings, the quiet reassurances that life gives you when you least expect them. The world teaches us to chase noise, to look for answers in volume and visibility. But the divine teaches us to find truth in stillness. When you learn to be still, you don't need to search for his voice. You begin to hear it everywhere. In laughter, in silence, in struggle, and in peace. Every small sign, every gentle whisper, every moment that feels too perfectly timed to be random. That's him. That's God saying, "I'm here. I've always been here. Just listen." Faith is not about seeing, it's about believing even when the road is hidden and the answers are silent. It's about walking forward when everything in you wants to turn back. When you can't see the way, but you still take the step. That's faith. It's not a concept written in books. It's a living force that breathes courage into fear and light into confusion. Faith is not the absence of doubt. It's the strength to move through doubt. It's not pretending everything is fine. It's trusting that even what's not fine has a divine reason. Life will often place you in situations where the path ahead looks dark and uncertain. You pray, you hope, you try, and still nothing seems to move. Those are the moments when your faith is not being destroyed, it's being developed. It's like a muscle, it grows only when stretched. When God hides the details, He's not trying to confuse you, He's inviting you to trust Him more deeply. If you could see the full picture, there would be no need for faith. Faith begins where logic ends. Think about driving at night. Your car's headlights don't show you the whole journey, they only show a few meters ahead. But as you keep driving, the road keeps revealing itself. That's exactly how faith works. You don't need to see the entire plan, you just need to trust that the one guiding you knows the way. Sometimes, all you get is enough light for the next step. And that's all you need. Because faith isn't about having the map, it's about trusting the one who designed the path. I once met a man who had faced endless failures in his life. He started a business that collapsed within a year. He tried again, and it failed again. Every time he prayed, asking God to show him the right path. But nothing seemed to work. He said, I began to lose hope. I couldn't understand why my prayers were unanswered. But one day, he took a small job helping an old craftsman in his workshop just to survive. Slowly, he started learning the art of crafting wood, and something inside him began to awaken. Years later, he opened his own workshop that became not just a business, but a source of joy and service to others. Looking back, he said, if God had answered my earlier prayers, I would have missed the life that was truly meant for me. Sometimes, faith means trusting that unanswered prayers are also part of the plan. Faith is tested when logic fails. When things don't go your way, faith whispers, there's still a way. When life seems unfair, faith says, keep walking. The story isn't over yet. It's easy to believe in the light when everything is bright. The real test of faith is to believe when it's dark. The night sky teaches us that stars are always there, but they can only be seen in darkness. Likewise, your faith shines most brightly in your hardest moments. There is a beautiful story of a farmer who planted his crops and then faced a long drought. The soil was cracked, the plants withered, and neighbors told him to give up. But every morning, he still walked to his fields, looked at the empty sky, and said, I know the rain will come. Days passed, weeks passed, and then one evening, the sky broke open and rain poured down. His faith didn't bring the rain faster, but it kept his hope alive until it arrived. That's what faith does. It doesn't always change your situation instantly, but it changes you in the waiting. Faith doesn't mean you won't feel fear. It means you won't be ruled by it. It means when your mind screams, it's impossible, your heart still whispers, but what if it's not? Faith is quiet strength. It doesn't shout, it endures. It's like the roots of a tree that you never see, but that's where the strength truly lies. Even when the winds of life shake you, it's faith that keeps you grounded. Many people say, I'll believe it when I see it. But the truth is the opposite. You'll see it when you believe it. The moment you start believing that life is not happening to you but for you, everything changes. You begin to notice doors opening, opportunities appearing, people entering your life at just the right time. That's not luck. That's divine alignment responding to your faith. Every person who has ever achieved something meaningful in life carried faith when the world carried doubt. Think of the seed buried underground. It doesn't know what lies above, but it pushes through the darkness, trusting the light will meet it. That's faith. Or the mother who holds her newborn and prays for strength to raise her child, not knowing what tomorrow will bring. That's faith. The student who studies with hope, even after failing multiple times. That's faith. The patient who smiles despite the pain. That's faith. In every challenge, faith is the bridge between where you are and where you're meant to be. It doesn't guarantee an easy path, but it guarantees that you're never walking it alone. When your plans fall apart, remember, it's not a failure of faith, it's a redirection by it. Faith doesn't promise the absence of storms, it promises the presence of strength within them. So when life feels uncertain, when you can't see the end of the road, when your prayers seem unanswered, take a deep breath and whisper to yourself, I may not understand it now, but I trust the one who does. That simple act of belief releases peace where there was panic. You stop fighting against what's happening and start flowing with what's meant to be. Faith transforms fear into surrender and confusion into calm. And someday, when you look back at all those nights you cried, all those times you thought you wouldn't make it, you'll realize faith was never about changing your life instantly. It was about shaping you quietly. Every tear, every delay, every uncertain step was building something inside you that sight never could. Faith is not about seeing the hand of God. It's about trusting that His hand never left you. We often think delays are denials. When something doesn't happen according to our timing, we start to lose faith. We start to doubt ourselves. And we start to question God's plan. But what we call a delay is sometimes God's way of aligning things perfectly behind the scenes. His timing is never early, never late. It's always right. It's only our impatience that makes it feel otherwise. Every delay carries a message, a hidden preparation, a divine pause that protects and perfects what is meant for you. Imagine a farmer planting seeds. He waters the soil, cares for the land, and waits. The farmer doesn't dig up the seed every morning to check if it's growing. He trusts the process. He knows that beneath the surface, something is happening that his eyes can't see. But if he loses patience and stops watering, the seed will die before it blooms. Life is exactly like that. We plant prayers, we sow efforts, and we expect instant results. But every prayer, every dream, every effort has its own season. The delay is not the denial, it's the preparation for a stronger harvest. Sometimes God delays not to deprive you, but to develop you. If He gave you what you wanted before you were ready, it could break you instead of bless you. Think of a child asking for the car keys. A loving parent doesn't say no forever, but waits for the right time, when the child has grown, learned, and can handle the responsibility. Similarly, God knows when you're ready for what you've asked for. His timing protects you from premature blessings that could turn into burdens. I remember meeting a man who once said, I prayed for success for years, but nothing seemed to move. He worked hard, yet every door closed. He thought God was ignoring him. But a few years later, when he finally started his business, everything clicked. Resources, timing, people, it all came together smoothly. He said something so profound. If my prayers were answered when I first asked, I would have ruined the opportunity with my inexperience. That's how divine timing works. When you're being delayed, you're actually being designed. Delays also teach us humility and surrender. When things take longer than we expect, our ego begins to melt. We realize we are not the masters of time, we are the students of it. Patience purifies us. It breaks the illusion that we can control everything. You may want to rush the process, but God is not just preparing the destination for you. He's preparing you for the destination. He's shaping your character to match the blessing that's on its way. Think about a train journey. Sometimes the train stops at a station longer than expected. Passengers grow restless, wondering why it's not moving. But what they don't see is that ahead there's a signal being fixed or another train clearing the track. The delay isn't punishment, it's protection. If the train moved too soon, it might collide. In life too, delays are often God's way of clearing your path from unseen dangers. You might be ready, but maybe the path isn't, or maybe the people who will walk with you aren't in place yet. Divine timing means everything must align, not just you, but the entire picture. There's a hidden beauty in waiting. It slows you down just enough to notice what truly matters. While waiting for the big answer, you start valuing small blessings, your health, your family, the peace of an ordinary day. You realize that happiness is not only in the destination, but in the moments you live while getting there. Waiting teaches gratitude, and gratitude keeps you connected to grace. Even when nothing seems to be happening, something is always happening within you. One woman once shared her story about how she waited 7 long years for her dream job. Each rejection felt like a heartbreak, and she questioned why God was silent. But during those years, she developed skills she never planned to learn: public speaking, teamwork, leadership. When she finally got the job, she realized she was perfectly equipped for it. She said, "The delay wasn't just time passing, it was time preparing me." Sometimes God delays not because He wants you to wait longer, but because He wants you to rise higher. The beauty of divine timing is that it never misses its mark. What's meant for you cannot be taken by anyone else, and what's not meant for you cannot stay, no matter how much you chase it. When you truly understand this, peace replaces anxiety. You stop forcing things to happen and start flowing with what's unfolding. You begin to realize that the universe has its own rhythm and God is its conductor. The pauses in your life are not mistakes in the music. They're the rests that make the melody meaningful. Delays are often blessings wearing disguises. When your plans don't work out, it's often because something better is being prepared. You might not understand it now, but one day you look back and thank God for the doors that didn't open, because they would have led you away from what was truly meant for you. The person who left, the job that didn't work out, the dream that seemed to collapse, all were part of a greater orchestration.